Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by JoAnn Holmes, an IP and digital assets attorney. How are you doing today, JoAnn?
I'm doing really well, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Of course, you are very welcome. So tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to start your own law firm.
Sure. I've actually wanted to be a lawyer since I was 11 years old, but I do something very different than I could have imagined back then. My background is that I attended Stanford as an undergrad, which was a great foundation for technology, and went immediately into law school, where I learned what the words intellectual property are, which covers, it's an umbrella term for trademarks, copyrights, patents, trade secrets, and rights of publicity. And as I was in law school in the late 90s and thinking about a career, I thought, well, it seems like intellectual property will probably be important going forward. And so I focused my career there, started practicing law in 1999, right at the sort of height of the introduction of e-commerce and internet technology. And so my entire experience as a lawyer has really been infused with a focus around tech. I manage intellectual property in about 140 countries globally, and I serve as outside general counsel for clients who need me to help them understand a whole gamut of legal issues that support their business objective. As we speak now in the summer of 2022, my practice has pivoted to focus on supporting clients in Web3. And so I started as a little girl interested in law because I wanted to support justice. And I still care very deeply about that today as a law firm owner. And I think, to answer your question, part of the reason why I started my own firm is because I'm a mom and I wanted to have more autonomy about my schedule and be able to serve clients in the ways that I thought was best. And so being an owner is a great way to be able to do that.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So how would you define digital assets and why did you decide to make this your area of focus?
So again, intellectual property and technology are very deeply intertwined. And I'm a little bit of a tech geek. I'm a fan of the Apple ecosystem. And it's really extraordinary to me, the things that we can do just through the phone that's in our pockets. And so when I think about the way that opportunities, not just here in the United States, but globally have evolved based on mobile technology, I really have been fortunate as an attorney to see how the internet has been transformative in the law as well. And so when you ask the question, what are digital assets? Digital assets are a representation of the products of Web3. And so if we think about the evolution of the internet and the evolution of technology, there are always going to be a new set of products and services. And so whereas we have physical property like our homes or our cars, we have intellectual property that is, again, trademarks, copyrights, patents, and then digital assets that are newer types of products like NFTs, for example, or gaming assets in the metaverse. And so it's just a continual evolution of the way that products and services are offered as technology advances.
And how would you define Web3 and how does it differ from the previous versions of the web?
I'm going to borrow a little bit from Chris Dixon at Andreessen Horowitz, who lays this out in a timeline. So if we think back to the late 90s and early 2000s, we had Web 1, which was really something akin to digital magazines. So instead of maybe picking up a physical newspaper, you could read the news online. It was really read focused, but not so interactive. The next phase of the internet was Web 2, which was read write. And it was really an opportunity for us to communicate with one another. And we had the advent of mobile technology. We had the advent of centralized marketplaces where Facebook, for example, we could come together in community and not just read what Facebook wanted us to read, but also have an opportunity to be contributors and interact with one another. We had Amazon as another opportunity for a marketplace where people were contributors and buyers. And then Google as a data aggregator and a resource where we could conveniently find information that we wanted to apply in our lives. That was a step change in value and in evolution of technology. But those who really benefited from that were the owners and shareholders in those businesses as centralized resources. And the people who used them, unless again you were a shareholder, didn't really get a lot of value in terms of growing wealth from those resources. And so again, that was Web 2, where we could kind of read, write, and contribute. Web 3 is read, write, and own. And what's exciting about that is that, let's say, for example, you are an artist and you offer your art in a digital format as an NFT. No matter where you are in the world, if you have internet access, you can make a contribution in that Web3 community and you can be compensated for that value. You don't, for example, have to go through a traditional gatekeeper like a Christie's or a Sotheby's, where some middle person decides that your art has a certain value. You can build a community, you can put your work on a global marketplace, and that marketplace can decide what the value of your work is. So it's really the next change where those who participate and provide value then have an opportunity to earn more of a fair share for their contributions.
And you kind of answered my next question, which was, why should a business, a brand, or a creator consider incorporating a Web3 technology into their business?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things to be thoughtful about is that there's always going to be new technology. And so, for example, large brands are thinking very carefully about their Web3 strategy. I think there are opportunities across a gamut of product and service offerers, whether they be small businesses or large global organizations. But the key is to think about, what value do you want to contribute to your community? So for example, people might launch an NFT, but they haven't really thought about building community first. They haven't really thought about the reason why someone would want to own that NFT. They haven't perhaps thought about what access to the artist or to a community owning that NFT is going to offer. They haven't really thought about the ecosystem of, is it just going to be a piece of digital art that maybe you display on your phone or in a television in your home? Or is it going to be a gateway such that you are able to see some financial appreciation from it, that it's not only going to be a piece of digital art, it's going to be a gaming asset, it's going to show up in film, it's going to have really, again, an ecosystem. If you think about the example of Apple, you have Mac computers, but then they can talk to your iPhone and they can talk to your iPad, and then you might have a music subscription. And so there's an ecosystem of value built out there. So what I would say to anyone who is thinking about why they want to issue an NFT, or why they might want to build a DAO or a decentralized autonomous organization as a community that comes alongside maybe your traditional LLC or corporation, or why you would want to be involved in virtual communities through the metaverse. Really thinking through your value proposition and why that's better than what exists right now, so that you have a meaningful story to tell to bring people along and want to participate.
What businesses would you say are best suited for this space? Are there certain industries that work better and some others where it's not such a great fit?
I don't think it's necessarily industry exclusive. And I think there are a few different ways to think about this. So if you're a professional service advisor, maybe you're an attorney like me, maybe you're a strategic consultant, which is some of what I do in helping people understand how to move from Web2 into Web3, and how to have that value proposition to your community. Maybe you're in marketing, maybe you're in finance. So one aspect of thinking about this is, what do you as an individual contributor have an expertise around that you have offered historically, and how can you provide value in Web3? I think those individual contributor stories are important to think about. And then if we think about on a larger scale of an organization, once you understand what you have to contribute on an individual scale, then you have a story to tell about your company's products or service offerings. And so it might be that you have a well-built reputation as a beverage company, and maybe through NFT holding, you're going to have access at a festival to a certain part of that festival, or a certain artist in a festival who, if you hold the NFT for that beverage company, you're going to get access to be able to do that. You might be a celebrity who has a following, and you might say, well, if you're a member of my DAO, then you're going to have access to backstage meet and greet with me when I'm in your city. You might be a product, let's say a clothing company, and you might say, if you are either, again, a DAO member or you are an NFT holder, you're going to get access to a certain piece of clothing in our line that only people who are part of our digital community can have that access to. So again, it's really thinking about what is your existing offering? How might it present in the digital world? And how is that valuable? If you already have, for example, Nike saw value in the digital space and bought a company called Artifact that was creating really innovative tennis shoes that are presenting in the metaverse. And Nike said, you know, we have a great reputation on a global basis around athletic gear. We think these are really cool kicks, and we want to have this as an asset in our portfolio, understanding that the technology is evolving, our audience is going to evolve, and we want to continue to have that cool factor around Nike associated products. So the reason why that was a useful acquisition for Nike Corporation was they were thinking about, what are we already known for? What community have we already built? And how can we be a leader in bringing that community along to where we know technology is moving?
Are there any other notable acquisitions that you've come across recently?
I think there are acquisitions happening on a regular basis. Some of them, of course, just because we are currently in a bit of a bear market for cryptocurrencies. And so some of that has slowed down in 2022. I think what's happening right now is a real focus. A lot of the hype and speculation has moved out of the market. And I think what's happening right now is that Web3 native companies are heads down building. If you correlate this again to the early 2000s and the dot-com bubble and bust, there were those who said, okay, I might have been in it because I was looking for exponential returns. And then there were others who really found promise in the technology. And when the bust happened, they just kept working. They kept building. They kept thinking about, again, that step change between what existed at that phase in our history and how it could be made much better using internet technology tools. I think the same thing is happening right now. So there's less conversation about acquisitions that is as visible as the Nike Artifact, but there's more conversation around brands thinking about meaningful strategy for their existing customer base. Mm-hmm. There's also Web3 native companies, again, heads down focused on how they build step change meaningful products and services. And I would imagine that to the extent that there is a real opportunity for those who have the capital in a challenging financial market, including Web3 and beyond, there are still conversations happening about strategic acquisitions where it makes sense. A lot of times, if there's a consolidation of talent, and again, you have the capital for an acquisition, what you're looking to buy into is that talent pool. And I think that's something that happens on a continuous basis.
Right. And what are the first steps a brand or a business should take in developing a Web3 strategy?
I think it goes back to some of what we discussed before. You know, I've seen examples where, especially before the financial markets turned in 2022, where there was just a lot of money being thrown out to see what might stick and what might work. In order to develop a meaningful strategy for an existing brand, I think it's important to step back and think about what has been meaningful to your community of buyers thus far. So let's say your Coca-Cola, for example, you've got people who are collecting old Coke bottles. You've got people who might have over the years collected your ads as they've changed as memorabilia. You've got people who might have, physical bottles of Coke products in their home, maybe in their bar in their basement or what have you, to reflect their dedication to that brand. So really thinking through what has caused your brand or your products and services to stand out historically, and then having a person, or better yet, a team in an organization come up with a holistic, thoughtful plan for how you can provide value in this space. So what might that look like? That looks like having someone from marketing who, with Web3, especially if you're issuing NFTs, for example, marketing might go from a cost center to a revenue generator, because without substantial costs, like the costs of manufacturing with ingredients, logistics, transportation, you can have artwork that continues to build out loyalty to your brand, but becomes a revenue generator relative to traditional legacy advertising that was a cost of doing and maintaining your brand awareness. So it might, again, include someone from marketing. It might include someone from product innovation and thinking through where there are synergies around new product offerings that you might consider. It might include someone from your partnerships division of your business to think about, are there existing communities in Web3, maybe as a DAO, maybe a group with an affinity on Discourse or Telegram, where they're already interested in something that's a nice partnership opportunity for your brand. So really thinking through on a comprehensive basis, the finances, the marketing, the potential partnerships, the opportunities for revenue generation, and of course, including legal, because the unfortunate reality is there's a lot of bad and misinformation about the legalities of so many components of Web3. And when you're thinking through a Web3 strategy, there are so many aspects of law, including intellectual property with trademarks and copyrights, contracts with licensing agreements, so that people understand when you're issuing, for example, an NFT, what rights are you granting? And when you're buying an NFT, what rights are you getting? Questions around company formation and protection. Thinking through taxation issues is an important one. If you're going to have a DAO, there could be questions around, are the participants in the DAO volunteer members? Are they employees, or are they independent contractors? So the entire gamut of legal issues that have historically impacted a business are also going to have cadence in Web3, but the law is evolving very quickly because, as we know, technology moves more quickly than law. The Biden administration has issued a whole of government review of how regulatory agencies can be thoughtful about digital assets. So our regulation is going to change. And then also we have a legal system in the United States where effectively anybody can sue anybody for anything. And so judges and juries are also going to be hearing litigation, and the results, the decisions out of those court cases are going to set legal precedent as well. So all of that is to say that it's important in that cross-departmental collaboration around what to offer in Web3. Certainly legal is a component of that as well.
Surely. And you mentioned DAOs. Could you explain what a DAO is?
Absolutely. So a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and it is the Web3 version of how you pull teams together for a common objective. So a DAO might be focused on investing, right? It might be the modern version of an investment club where you and some of your friends get together, form a DAO. You have a digital treasury of cryptocurrencies, stable coins, various types of crypto assets. You might buy NFTs together. You might buy different cryptocurrencies together. It depends on what your investment objectives are. A DAO might be formed for a charitable purpose where you want to raise money to support something that all of you agree in. And want to put your financial resources behind. A DAO might be formed to offer a given product or service that doesn't exist, or where you and a group of others believe that you can improve on what already exists. A DAO might be a collective that is effectively the way that you allow technology to exist. So we know that there are financial decentralized organizations that are effectively akin to a stock exchange in the Web3 context. And so there might be a group of founders who came together to create that platform, but ultimately you might have computer nodes all over the world that are and lenders and borrowers and what have you, who are making that exchange work. And so it's no longer controlled by the original founders. Those organizations can be set up as DAOs. So DAOs are very flexible in that they are designed to either be quickly organized and quickly dissolved around a given function, or to have a long lasting but decentralized, potentially global way for people to come together around a common objective.
That's interesting. And in terms of the global use of Web3, what are you seeing, like for instance, in developing areas, let's say like African countries, how are they using Web3 differently than is being used here in the US or in the UK? Because clearly they're like a different set of challenges there that are being addressed.
So one thing to keep in mind is while Web3 is innately global, the law is not. Every different country has the right to set its own laws around how it is going to deal with the myriad of legal issues that we started to talk about before, be that the law of how currency, what constitutes currency in a given country? What are the laws about who you can do business with in a given country? Here in the United States, we have sanctions that are designed to prevent illegal, criminal, terroristic activity and so forth. And so there might be regulations around who you can interact with in a given country. There are going to be different intellectual property laws from country to country, different contract laws. All of these things will have an impact on how citizens of a given nation in the developing world might interact with Web3 versus the way that we do it here in the United States. One of the key compelling potential opportunities of Web3 is for those who are trying to share remittances. So we know that historically there have been organizations that, again, served as kind of middlemen who have extracted substantial expense when there is a remittance from someone, let's say back to their family members in their home country. One of the promises of cryptocurrencies is to be able to have trustless peer-to-peer transaction. What does that mean? That means you're not going through a bank to issue a wire. You're not going through, for example, Western Union to move money. If you have a digital wallet and someone else in another part of the world has a digital wallet, you can send cryptocurrency, and the nodes, the computer nodes around the world on the blockchain are verifying that you have that cryptocurrency, and it has been released from your digital wallet, and that someone else who holds the digital wallet you're sending it to, that wallet is ready and available to receive that cryptocurrency. And so that takes obviously away a substantial set of fees and the structure around that financial paradigm where you've got to have a relationship with a bank, for example, to be able to send a wire. The wire may or may not go through. The wire may or may not take days for the transaction to complete. You may unfortunately have given the wrong information, and someone might think that you're on a sanctions list. And so there are a number of different reasons why, from a financial perspective, cryptocurrencies can be a resource that has value and is being explored in the developing world. As Americans, we frankly have the luxury and the privilege for many of us to have access to financial systems or to fintech tools like a Cash App or a Venmo that we can't take for granted for people in much of the developing world. Another way that I think people in the developing world, and I certainly hope that they will take advantage, is just being able to participate in a global marketplace. So we know, for example, that during the pandemic, many people's livelihoods were compromised because they couldn't get into the marketplaces where they sold their products or their services. Because Web3 is online and is global, you have organizations like Axie Infinity, for example, that was formed by people in the Philippines primarily, and it gave a way for people to do something called play to earn, whereby either having someone provide you with NFTs or digital assets, you could go and use them in that gaming world to be able to earn cryptocurrency that was then transferred to the local fiat currency or the corollary to the US dollar in the Philippines. So some people in different parts of the world literally started to earn their living where they didn't have other better opportunities through play to earn gaming. Now, I will be the first to admit, especially as an attorney, we can't be Pollyannish. We can't pretend like there aren't both opportunities and challenges with either of the things I just described or other opportunities in Web3. But what I am excited about is the advances in technology and the innovation that happens that causes people to be able to think through what are the tools and devices that we have? How can I create something that didn't exist and let the market and in reality, governmental regulators decide what they're comfortable with allowing to flourish. But I think that people will innovate, people will create. That's how we're designed. Yeah. And so these are just new tools and new ways that I certainly hope will continue to provide access that didn't previously exist in the developing world.
When I first started hearing about NFTs, my first initial reaction was I was overwhelmed because there's a lot to learn. It's like a whole new language, it's a whole new world. And I was like, okay, I might have to sit this one out. But the more I learn about it, the more interesting it is. What are your thoughts on us, quote unquote, not missing the boat and getting involved in this and NFTs or Web3 being a great equalizer in terms of racial equity?
So the first thing I would say is, please get good quality information and verify it. I am by no means the final say on any of the things that we've discussed today, but I certainly hope that I will be a gateway to give a foundation for people to go and check other resources, cross-check the ways and perspectives that I think about these things. In other words, find trusted information resources and cross-check that to make sure that it verifies and that it makes sense to you. So that's the first thing. Let's just make sure that our communities are educated so that you then can make informed decisions about how you choose to participate. The reality is that this technology is inevitable. If you were in the late 90s or early 2000s and said, I'm not interested in the internet, you can imagine looking back that there were extraordinary opportunities that you would have missed out on. It's virtually impossible to not participate in some way in the internet or in mobile technology as we exist now in 2022. That is the reality of what these new advances in technology will reflect in Web3. So again, it is your personal decision about how you choose to get involved, especially at these still early stages. But I would want people to at least be educated and informed. Start conversations in your community. When you find a good resource, like what we're doing now, Tony, share it with someone, spark their curiosity, and also just outright tell someone if you know something to not be true, because it's as important to share good information as to stop the flow of bad information. Right. So what I would say is, again, think about how you want to contribute. It might be that you want to move off zero, buy, a fraction of a Bitcoin, and that's one thing to keep in mind. The cost of a Bitcoin can fluctuate wildly, literally thousands of dollars, but you don't have to buy an entire Bitcoin. You can buy a fraction of it, just like you can buy a fraction of a share of a stock. So you could buy $10 worth. And what will that do? It will get your attention. You'll have some skin in the game and you'll start to pay attention when you hear the term cryptocurrency or when you hear the term Web3. One thing that might be helpful is breaking down what is Web3. I see that as 5 things. I see that as cryptocurrency, which are the financial tools, the money of this technology, decentralized finance, which are all of the financial tools for things like borrowing and lending, yield, ownership in assets and so forth, that are the financial systems, if you will, just like in our legacy financial lives. A lot of that has been recreated in a Web3 context. Some of it is more legitimate and established than others. And so again, it's important to do your homework there. The third piece is what we've talked about a decent bit today, which are NFTs. NFTs stand for non-fungible tokens. And what is that when we really break it down? There's two things. There's the deed of ownership or the token. You've got a deed of ownership in your house or your car. When you buy something, you need some certificate that shows that you own that. That's what the token is in that NFT side. And then that token is related to something, some kind of asset. It could be digital or not digital. So people have already started to buy and sell homes as NFTs, right? Homes are physical world assets. Whereas by comparison, you might also have a piece of digital art that's what's linked to that token. So an NFT is, again, a deed of ownership linked to some asset, be it physical or digital. So that's number 3 in what we call Web3. Number 4 is what we talked about, DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations, which are the ways that people and communities come together for a common purpose in Web3. And then the 5th and final is the metaverse. And the metaverse is just virtual interactions around common identities. So if you have kids, they might play Roblox or Minecraft. That's a Web2 version of the metaverse. A Web3 version might be a world like Decentraland or Sandbox. And so what is valuable in Web3 is, whereas if your kids have emotes or weapons in Minecraft or World of Warcraft, the corporation that presented that game to your child owns all of those assets. It's probably a violation of the terms of service for your child to go and try to sell those assets outside of the game. Whereas the promise of metaverse worlds and Web3 is that you can own those digital assets, and ideally they would be interoperable. So again, you could use them to sell them as an asset, like you could sell your car or your house. Yeah. You could use them in gaming. You could use them to go create new assets from them. In maybe you create characters for a comic book or a music group. The difference, again, if we go back to that conversation about transition from Web 1, Web 2 to Web 3 is Web 3 is where contributors get to own assets, and not just the shareholders and founders of companies get the wealth. Mm. So when we think about participation of communities that have historically been left behind by design or marginalized and left out of financial systems, what's exciting to me as an attorney and someone who believes in investing and owning assets of all different types is that our communities don't have to go through those traditional gatekeepers. It's really an issue of getting educated, deciding what you think has value in this space, and giving yourself permission to jump in at a level that you feel comfortable with to start owning some of these assets and seeing how they can have value for you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much. So JoAnn, if someone wants to reach out to you and find out more about their Web3 strategy or how to navigate this whole NFT space, where can they find you?
Thank you for giving me that chance to share, Tony. So my website is holmesatlaw.com. Again, my name is JoAnn Holmes. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's a great place where we can connect with one another. I like to see what people are building, give my feedback when I can. And the way that I work with clients are a few ways. First, if you are in the early stages as a builder, creator, developer in the road mapping and white paper stage, I like to do consultations, 90-minute consultations, so I can give you feedback and you can have visibility around the opportunities and legal risks as you're designing your offering. The second way that I help with folks is around strategy. So you might have an existing Web 2 business. You're trying to think about what can I offer that will have value in Web 3? Or you might be a professional who is thinking about, I have this skill set. I want to think about how that translates to products or services in Web 3. So really that strategic thinking around how do I go from where I am to where I want to be to offer value in digital assets. And the third way that I work with clients is if you have an existing organization that's growing and scaling, as we talked about, the legal landscape is regularly changing. So where we want to have a recurring advisory relationship where I'm touching base with clients on a monthly basis to hear how their business is growing and scaling and give them proactive feedback with a recurring legal relationship so that I can regularly help them to achieve their business objectives.
Awesome. So I have a strategy in mind for Shop Black, our own Web3 strategy. So I will definitely be reaching out to you to discuss that.
I would love that. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks again for stopping by, and you have a great rest of the day.
You as well. Thanks, everybody. I invite you into this space. We need you all to be here.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Take care.